Roadies and musicians of Reddit, what's the weirdest and craziest crap you've seen? NSW. We played the main stage at Reading Festival in 2008. Now, throwing bottles and stuff at the stage is pretty commonplace there, but this day was special. Metallica was headlining. Tenacious D was playing. Avenged Sevenfold was supposed to play, but cancelled at the last minute. So picture an endless sea of drunken metalheads that have been going hard for the last 2 days, who are furious because Avenged cancelled, who just want to see freaking Metallica, and then the plain white tees step out on stage. Before we even hit a single note, the barrage of bottles, garbage, batteries, and even a Super Bowl, which was pretty cool because we got to keep it and bounce it around, were launched into the air. The assault continued throughout the whole set at full tilt. Then we played Hey There Delilah, and something magical happened. The bottles stopped. The crowd started spreading apart. A large hole formed in the middle of the mob with one drunk dude standing in the middle. All of a sudden, the two sides of the crowd started charging at each other, like that scene in Braveheart. The drunk guy in the middle drops his pants, throws his arms up, and the biggest freaking circle pit I've ever seen converges all around him. And here we are watching from the stage, playing our cheesy little acoustic love song while all this intense moshing and smiling is happening. It was the single craziest, most incredible moment, and something we will never forget. Never had more fun. I was a guest roadie for Riff Raff for Warped Tour. He was a total introvert and I never saw any C whatsoever. Shocking, right? Also, I'd like to mention he really is a great guy and he would always try to throw as much free stuff to the crowd as possible and do free meet and greets and stuff, but his management shot him down 99% of the time. That warms my heart. A little while back my crappy band sold enough tickets to open up for Adesanya. We were all teenagers and absolutely obsessed with these guys. I knew that if I could get to the backstage area to meet them I'd be a legend among my group. Easily got backstage after telling the bouncer that I was in one of the local bands. I thought that he would say no, so I was totally unprepared to meet the band. I walk in, do an awkward wave and sit in an isolated chair. The lead singer says, "Who's that sweaty guy?" Me? "Yeah, you." I'm Milkweed." Cool. Weirdly, my bandmates still thought that I was cool as heck for getting backstage. During their set, their lead guitarist started climbing around the ceiling like a monkey. He fell down into the crowd and disappeared. Lead singer to crowd, "Give him back. Give us our guitarist." The guy ended up having a broken ankle. I know those dudes. They used to play at the brewery in Raleigh quite a bit and there wasn't crap else to do back in 2006. Crap like this always seemed to happen. Vocalist jumped into the crowd at one show and his bony butt gave me a black eye. I learned to stay the frick away from the front when they played. Not really crazy, but definitely a little weird and one good experience from tour. I was on tour for 3 weeks this summer filling in on drums for my friend's band. We are from NJ and just played a show in Michigan and it started raining really heavily. The band we were on tour with decided to get a nice hotel room for the night and let 2 of us crash on their floor while the rest crashed in the van. While waiting to go into the hotel, 3 of us were standing outside, smoke a cigarette, just bullshitting. 2 huge redneck guys walk out of the hotel and come up to us. The one guy goes, "Hey, my name's Clifford," like the big red dog, in his Tennessee accent. Turns out these guys were doing some floor work on the hotel and each had their own king suite. They tell us they're with another guy, who they specifically told us he was black and they think he is gay, who would be coming out soon. As soon as this guy walks out, he walks right up to me, hands me a bag of weed and a Dutch and simple says, "Roll me this blunt." Of course I roll the man his blunt and we all smoke it right outside the hotel. We then say some of us are going to go in the van to sleep. Clifford felt bad for us. He said if we play him some songs on that Vegeta he would give us his room for free. So we go upstairs, play him a bunch of songs. He's feeding us whiskey, beer, and weed, then leaves and lets us have the whole room for the night. Shouts out Clifford. I thought for sure this story was going to end with sodomy. Played a show at this dive bar one time in Virginia. A larger woman was standing in front of us the whole time. She was enjoying the music and having a good time. It was nice to see someone of a different crowd getting into our music. Nearing the end of the show, she turns towards the crowd, back facing us, pulls her pants down, and shoots right on the floor. Get swifty. I've seen a guy play keyboard with his dong and people loved it. I've seen someone use an angle grinder on a microphone. I've seen a band whose entire setup was a drum kit, old Halloween decorations, and a tape loop of spooky sound effects. It was awesome. I've seen several people get hit in the face with full beer cans. One of my good friends uses a Hitachi wand as her main sound source. I've seen a Gigallo scream into a feedbacking amplifier and fight people. I saw a band called Hitler earlier this year. Seen a guy crowd surfing in an inflatable raft with speedos and snorkel at a show. Same show, a kid got flipped into the air. His feet hit the ceiling and he landed on the floor on his face. Seen a guy climb up a pillar in a tent at a festival, jump off and break his leg. A band threw a pineapple into the crowd and it hit someone straight in the face. I have lots of these. The pineapple one got me. From me, a guy in a Sailor Moon outfit getting humped, all while on tour in Cambodia. Bandmate buying speed from a Thai H. From a friend, he passed out in the toilet while taking a dump. Henry Rollins came along, pulled up his pants, picked him up and put him into bed. Unfortunately for my friend, he hadn't finished taking that dump. I feel like unexpected Henry Rollins should be a thing. Played a gig where the host later brought out a bunch of green vodka. We all started into the bottles and then had the champagne brought out as a sort of chaser. We chased the champagne with bear, ostrich and other weird meats. Funky cheese too. More green vodka was brought out, and about 2 minutes into the second round of bottles, women were topless. Men were grinding them to fight songs that were now being sung, and it was the perfect scene of Valhalla. I'm a violinist, and I was playing Gounod's Faust opera at an ambassador's home in DC, and was one of 3 invited to stay for the after party. You can just say Finnish ambassador, it's okay, really. Walked in on my buddy who's about 5 feet 4 and 130 pounds, freaking the biggest girl I've ever seen in the back lounge of the bus. Probably 500 plus lbs. It was so shocking, all I could do was laugh. He kept her panties and I had them hung on my drum rack for a while. The bigger the waistband, the deeper the quicksand, if you know what I mean. I was always so sad to see people moshing to our music and doing it completely wrong. No, flailing your arms around wildly is not moshing. No, punching someone in the stomach is also not moshing. Holy crap, please put that knife away already. Show up to Kirkwood near Tahoe in Northern California. We drive through the little ski town and it's dead. Seems like the place is empty. We set up in the one bar restaurant at the lodge and get ready for what seems like it will be a rough, boring night. At about 10 PM shortly after we start the set, a group of about 20-30 people show up ready to party. Everyone's wasted. A girl is on her knees in front of our singer pulling her shirt up, whipping her hair around. One girl is dancing double time to everything we play. A dude is passing out while standing up and still trying to dance. People are hooking up. I've never seen so much happen in such a small crowd. It ended up being one of the funnest nights of the tour. Turns out everyone there was rolling really hard on Molly. Didn't even offer us any. TLDR. Kirkwood likes to fricking party. I used to snowboard a lot, and some weird crap happens up at those Tahoe ski resorts. Played a show in Knoxville with my band. We are mid-set and this guy comes up and throws a $20 bill on the stage, which is cool, bit weird because we're not a cover band. We play original music, and this is the first time we've ever been tipped. This guy is wearing old Timmy clothes, long heavy trench coat, old weird looking hat, and a monocle. Anyways, he walks over to a waitress, whispers something, and leaves. We find out later from the waitress that this guy told her that we should keep doing what we're doing, blah blah. But she also says the guy told her that he was spending his family's inheritance tonight and he showed her this Bible that had a gun inside of it. She told him she didn't think he should have that in the bar, so he left. The bartender said the guy had been paying $20 a drink all night. Apparently he was from Rocky Top, a really small, poor town outside of Knoxville. We were all pretty rattled. One of the bands I was in, the drummer was a straight up crazy person. He worked out like mad and took some sort of supplement, so he looked like John Cena, but like 5 feet 6 inches. If you handed this dude fish paralyzers and told him it'd get him high, he'd swallow them and then go off to find some blow. Anyway, one night, he got a hold of some really good coke. and had us all back in his van blowing lines off his drum cases. We were all screaming crazy high, and the drummer decided he needed to come down, so he drinks what he calls blackout juice, Jagermeister and Robitussin DM. We get through the third set, and the drummer is starting to slide off his stool in between songs, but dang if he isn't getting all the fills and accents right. I can barely remember the words to songs I wrote, and I've just got a snoot full of sugar. Little did I know he had also taken a bunch of Viagra, because he had plans to frick the club owner, an attractive 40-something. He fricked her, alright, in the wide open green room visible to the 20 or so musician occupants and most of the rest of the club. Super fricking awkward. TL. DR. Rock drummer at a club show goes on a drug bender. Fricks club owner in green room in front of 20 plus witnesses, all of whom look away and pretend nothing is happening. Sounds like a drama. Thousands of crazy, weird stories of booze, drugs, women, etc. The coolest thing was when a group of women brought their mother to the club in her wheelchair. One of the daughters said her mom was in hospice care and her last wish was to have a scotch and listen to some traditional jazz in the French Quarter. We played some standards and she gently waved her white napkin in the air. Between songs I brought her a drink and she kissed me on the cheek. Her daughters were all crying but she had the biggest smile. That's very sweet of you. My girlfriend works in hospice and I guarantee that meant the world to both her and her children. I play in a cover band in downtown Las Vegas. It's not glamorous, but the pay is alright and I get to play drums for money. The crazy things you see and hear downtown, especially on Fremont Street, make your day. 1. While covering Stevie Wonder's Superstition, an elderly black man in a wheelchair rolled up and started head bobbing to the groove, only to immediately stand up and throw down some serious moves. We are certain we cured his paralysis with Stevie Wonder. 2. A middle-aged white woman, possibly homeless, came into the bar while we were playing Tom Petty's Free Fallin'. After a short while of sitting quietly, when we hit the climax on the last chorus, she shouted at the top of her lungs, stood up, raised her arms, and spun in a circle. After a few rotations, she fell to her knees and began to weep. We are certain we brought a woman to Jesus through Tom Petty. 3. A mid-20s female came into the bar and sat on the table in front of us facing us, while a male sat in the chair. He then proceeded to finger her for a solid 10 minutes. All jackhammer technique, no variation. The bass player and I watched in horror, unable to look away. When she showed up for work the next day, we realized she was a recently hired waitress who had gotten drunk after her first day and proceeded to perform for us. We called her Finger Bang the entire 3 months she worked there. Here are some of the odd things we've been told. You are good. You should be playing on the street. Hold on. Wait. Is that a compliment? We get paid to be in this air-conditioned bar. Why would we play on the street? I don't want to be in butthole, but you should play better music. Frick you, buddy. We've been taking requests since the beginning of the night. We aren't picking the set list. Y'all are. After we finish Led Zeppelin's Ramble on Do You Know Any Jethro Tull? No. That'd be cool, though. No flute. Sorry, what? How can you play Led Zeppelin and not Jethro Tull? You guys are buttholes. I was unaware the two bands were so linked. After asking for requests from a Full House freebird, aha, yeah, no more requests from that guy. Here he proceeds to come up on stage and berate us for singling him out. Hey, man, don't be that cliched butthole and we'd ignore you, like we are every other jackass that's shouting freebird. My husband is in a cover band that charges $50 to play freebird on request. People have actually paid it more than once. I play in an Aerosmith tribute band that does well and travels all across the US and occasionally beyond. Several years ago we played 4 nights in the greater Chicago area. These 2 girls came the second night and fell in love with the band. So they came back the third night, and one of them decided she loved the guy who played Joe Perry, so she had him sign her chest after the show. Night 4, they come back, and she had just had his signature tattooed. Now I know plenty of people who have autographs from real bands, but really, someone from a tribute band? Months later she found herself in a relationship. She got the tattoo covered up with a lily. From that day, the guitar player's nickname became Lily. I saw desperate groupies ants. We played a show where any local band could play and there were these 2, openly dressed, chicks front row and they just cheered for everyone while most other people came for one band, cheered for them and maybe for the 2 bands that were actually good. After the show we were all hanging out in the lobby and I saw the 2 literally walk from band to band, talk and then, after being ditched, move on. After 3 bands or so one of them made out with our drummer. I should also mention it was our first gig and we sucked butt. I played a house show in Portland with my punk band. Everyone is huffing paint. Someone gets stabbed. Someone gets their guitar stolen. And the collected door fee gets stolen. Someone teaches me how to make crack. Roll to the after party at another house. Stolen kegs. Free beer. Neo-Nazi skinheads show up and start smashing people in the head with frying pans. But we're white smash. White power bill. But I'm white. Back in 88 or maybe 89 I was a roadie for a small act touring Daytona, Florida during spring break season. One night after the show and with the bars all closed we all headed to the beach to party. Our drum tech was making out with this girl along the incoming waves laying in the sand. When all of a sudden she let out this scream, like heck had opened up. A bloated body of a lost Key West scuba diver had washed up and landed on them. A few off the top of my head. I was working at a show where a lady runs up on stage, takes the microphone from the performer and starts to yell I need some black dong. Any and wanna frick me. Everyone is looking at everyone else like what the frick do we do, and for some reason I decided to throw her over my shoulder and literally throw her out of the club. She beats me along the way, but I put up with it and just drop her into the gravel outside. Her husband runs up to us, claps the crap out of her ears, apologizes to me, and throws her into their van and leaves. Pull up to a bar to play with my band and there is someone being stabbed in the guts in the parking lot. His buddies throw him into a car and speed away. For some reason, we decided that we better go inside and see what the deal is. Like a scene from movie, there's Merle Haggard on the jukebox. A line of burly fricks at the bar wearing Hex Angels jackets. This did not bode well for us as a hardcore punk band in the South. We vowed to just play 3 times harder than ever and just ride it out. They ended up buying us tons of beer and liquor, even offering us loose women and getting autographs for the wall. I really felt like Pee Wee Herman that night. Spent the night on the streets of Boston in winter because our drummer's sister was stabbed in the chest at our show that night and we had zero budget. Pulled up to our host's house in Providence, RI, where she immediately handed us a BB gun and a case of beer so that we can relax. Sitting on street in Philadelphia and a dirty disheveled woman runs by, followed closely by 2 cops. The last cop drops his gun on the ground right in front of us and keeps running out of sight. We look at each other like, do we leave a gun sitting here or do we hang out with this cop's gun? We ran away, bartending a fetish ball at a metal club. I had to kick out a 50-year-old dominatrix for making out with a 15-year-old boy who had snuck in. She was mad that I wasn't minding my own business. Sitting at CBGB, looked directly to my left and I'm eye to eye with a girl with a mohawk fellating a young fellow. Marky Ramone asked if he could use my drum kit once. Played a basement in DC, then immediately traveled to Philadelphia where our host showered us with booze, weed and psychedelics at 6 AM. I woke up alone in our van at 1 PM in the middle of summer completely drenched in sweat. That was probably the closest I came to death. That night our van was broken into, but they only stole cigarettes and condoms. The sex ones just come off like unbelievable P-plots. These are the type of crusty memories I best recall from playing the Midwest punk scene in that 90s early zeros. I opened for Wheatus a couple of years ago on their comeback tour in the UK. When I arrived at soundcheck I hadn't even listened to them since the early 90s and didn't have a clue what they looked like. So I was chatting away to what I thought was some random guy. He then gets on stage and starts soundchecking Teenage Dirtbag. I go up to the sound guy and was like, why the frick is the other support act covering Teenage Dirtbag? Turns out I was chatting away to the front guy from Wheatus, asking him where to put my guitar case blah blah like he was a technician. Kinda awkward. The Olive Girl. This girl wanted to hook up with me ever since we arrived at the club we were playing that night. Cute redhead. She kept some blow in her bra. She somehow talked her way backstage and was hanging all over me all night. Kept grabbing my dong through my pants etc. Proceeded to play the show, got wasted and we end up at the club owner's house. Her and I go into the bathroom, where she rides me for a solid 10 minutes. When done, She jumps up and there is a black thing stuck on the end of my dong. It looked like a rotten olive and the smell OMG. I was like WTF and grabbed a towel and wiped it off and it sort of popped into the towel, at which point I started projectile vomiting all over this dude's nice bathroom, all over the girl, everywhere. The girl was really embarrassed and she just vanished. I went and told my band about it and to this day all one of them has to say is olive girl and I want to get sick. I spent a week with a group of friends who were touring a couple years back in California. One of the fangirls wanted to meet the group so badly she claimed she'd do anything. My friend, being the creative guy that he is, told her she had to suck me off with a paper bag on her head. They drew these fricked up eyes on the bag and even put a target on her forehead. It was fricked up. It was the night before Warped Tour in Salt Lake City. We were parked at a McDonald's and this young couple approached our van and asked if we were part of the festival. One thing led to another and before we knew it we were picking up liquor and heading back to their hotel room where we proceeded to play Never Have I Ever. In almost no time at all, the guy admitted to sucking his brother off, having sex with his female cousin, and a whole array of other weird stuff, much to the dismay of his girlfriend who was just finding this out for the first time. I stood up, went to sleep in the van, and never set foot in Utah again. Freaking Utah, man. I learned to keep your passes inside your shirt. I was doing load-in for a festival and there were a bunch of hot girls along the barrier. They were calling for me to come over, so of course I did. The one starts being all flirty and sexy, then grabs my freaking lanyard and turns to run. I caught her by the ponytail and got my stuff back, but I learned to keep everything tucked away unless you need to show it. I was mistaken for the pyrotechnician, had to do the pyrrhus without proper training. I was 17 at that point and it was one of the most stressful points in my life when the show started. Not a roadie or musician, but here's a tip anyway about the fire you do not want associated with your new mixtape. Flaming pig heads will drip hot oil, so if you happen to have one impaled on a stick and your job is to use it as the band's totem, you will get rained on by hot pig head grease. Don't volunteer for this duty. It's not worth it even if you get to be on stage for the show. Solid advice. Thanks. I was working standby medical at a Snoop Dogg show in SF. I think Regency Ballroom. I was posted up front on the barrier looking for people that were getting crushed, puking crowd syndrome, when Snoop's hype man came out with a gallon Ziploc bag full of blunts. He lit one, passed it to Snoop who toked on it for a couple seconds, then passed it to the crowd. This happened for the entire show and was broken up by the hype man just throwing handfuls of blunts out into the crowd. I crap you not, we were contact high by the end of the night. The first hip-hop contest that I entered was in a pretty bad neighborhood and whoever won would get the $300 prize. It was based off crowd reaction and cheers and it was down to me and one other guy. The other guy was with a crew of hype men on stage that were waving around knives and other weapons they had. So much for security. The crowd was cheering a lot louder for me at the end of the show, but I began to get surrounded on stage and went up to the guy and said, how about we just split it in order to leave without getting the crap kicked out of me? He agreed, gave me £1 and I tried to get out of there as fast as possible because everywhere I walked people would surround me and press up on me telling me to buy their CD now that I have money, even though they just gave it to me for free when we were all sharing mixtapes and stuff. I'm not a roadie, but I worked as a stagehand and runner at a lot of shows during college and I have one particular festival that no amount of eye bleach can cure. I worked a festival in Sturgis, SD a few years back during the bike rally week. I was in my early 20s and I'd never been to Sturgis, but of course, I had heard all of the stories of debauchery and nudity, so I had an understanding of what I might see that week. Anyways, the kickoff of the festival was Kiss. Some of the other stagehands and I had some pre-show duties, but were released from working during the show, so we decided to grab some beers and hike to the top of the hill to watch the show for a bit. We took a side route to get around the crowd as much as possible, and found a little spot that suited us. Not more than a minute into shouted out loud, one of the other stagehands gives me a nudge and points to a spot downhill. I could barely understand what the heck he was saying, as he was trying not to die of laughter. Initially, I completely missed it and just thought he was pointing out some girl flashing her fun bags. He redirects me, and I finally see what he's howling at. No more than 20 yards downhill from us is a couple freaking doggy style like the end of the world was 5 minutes away. The guy's giving it to this girl so hard that she starts to slide downhill because she's losing her footing, or hands and kneesing, I guess. It became enough of a problem for them that they decide to switch it up, so she climbs on top of him. During their positional maneuvering, she saw our group keeled over in laughter and amusement at their expense. Rather than stop, she just waves at us and keeps on trucking. TLDR. Watched people have sex on a hill while Gene Simmons and company were putting on a show. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.